When you hear the name Tim Burton, what comes to mind? Monochrome colors, dark, whimsical atmospheres, offbeat loner artistic weirdos probably played by Johnny Depp.
Filmmaking is not about the tiny details, it's about the big picture.
Whatever you think of, unless you're a diehard fan, I bet the last name to pop into your head would probably be Pee-wee Herman.
That's my name, don't wear it out.
I mean, it's weird, right? That Tim Burton's first feature-length film would be a vehicle for Paul Reubens' beloved character, aptly titled Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I mean, look how awkward he looks next to all these other weird Tim Burton characters. And with the untimely passing of Reubens a little over a year ago, the film's 40th anniversary this year, and Tim Burton returning to his filmmaking roots with Beetlejuice, I kinda wanted to celebrate the legacy of Pee-wee Herman, and possibly convince y'all that Pee-wee's Big Adventure might be a little bit more Burton-y than you think. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I've tried to make this video several times over the past year. It started out as a retrospective on Tim Burton's filmography, then just an examination of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and on top of some personal hurdles I've had to overcome, one of which being the passing of my favorite filmmaker, David Lynch, which hopefully by next month I can have a tribute video for. I couldn't quite crack what I wanted this video to be. But what kept me going and wanting to keep trying was rediscovering why I loved Pee-wee Herman and Paul Reubens in the first place. So instead of dissecting every little minutia of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I felt like it would be a lot more fun to talk about how Pee-wee started and Paul's overall legacy with the character. And I thought y'all might think so too. So let's get started. Part 1. Pre-Pee-wee. Paul Reubens was born Paul Rubenfeld in Peekskill, New York on August 27, 1952. He knew, ever since he was little, that he wanted to be an entertainer, owing his love for performing to frequently attending the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, which might explain the second Pee-wee movie, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. He also noted that his love for comedy sprouted from watching reruns of I Love Lucy around the same time. Unable to shake the acting bug, he moved to California to attend CalArts, a school we'll hear about again a little bit later in the video, before joining the Los Angeles sketch comedy troupe The Groundlings. Among his peers here would be future frequent collaborators Phil Hartman, John Paragon, Lynn Marie Stewart, and Cassandra Peterson, who some of y'all would know better by her alter ego, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, whom she developed here. But that wasn't the only thing that developed. It was also here that the Pee-wee Herman character was born. Reubens, with a little help from Hartman, would continue to iron out the character at the Groundlings, Pee-wee's name originating from a harmonica of the same name, and someone named Herman, both from Reubens' youth. Initially envisioned as a crappy stand-up comedian, one who could never remember his jokes and would just laugh at himself, this iteration caught the eye of comedy duo Cheech Marin and Tommy Chong. Now, Pee-wee's Big Adventure was not Paul Reubens' first movie. Hell, it wasn't even the first time Pee-wee Herman appeared in a movie. That honor goes to Cheech and Chong's next movie, their follow-up to Up in Smoke. However, if you're expecting the Pee-wee Herman we all know today, that's really not what we get here. He's a bit more adult. He's brash.
Excuse me, sir. Yeah, what do you want?
Swears.
Go, you fucking asshole!
And he's presented as an unfunny comedian who's outdone by Cheech and Chong. Well, Cheech's other character in the movie, Red, but that's beside the point. Pee-wee is ostensibly one of the film's antagonists, and even though this was a prototypical Pee-wee, several characteristics associated with the cemented character appear here. His gray suit and bow tie, his laugh, and even some of his catchphrases.
I know you are, but what am I?
Yeah?
Part 2. The Pee-wee Herman Show. After he and the other Groundlings discovered by the duo appeared in next movie, Reubens retooled the character to have more of a childlike persona, trading out the comedian shtick for hosting a campy, kitschy, children's show parody, fittingly titled The Pee-wee Herman Show. And it's kind of a riot. It's essentially more of an adult version of Pee-wee's Playhouse, even sharing some of the same characters, like Captain Carl, played by co-writer Phil Hartman, Miss Yvonne, played by Lynn Marie Stewart, and Jambi the Genie, played by John Paragon, who also voices Terry the Pterodactyl.
Hello, Pee-wee.
And if any of those names sound familiar to you outside of Pee-wee Herman lore, congratulations! You're like me! You don't want to be like me. Phil Hartman is probably best known for his tenure on Saturday Night Live, or as Troy McClure in the early seasons of The Simpsons. And Lynn Marie Stewart has been playing Charlie's mom on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia for nearly 20 years now. Hey, Matt from the future here. Right when I was putting the finishing touches on my video, Lynn Marie Stewart, who played Miss Yvonne, passed away of cancer at the age of 78. Fuck cancer, man. I really don't know how to segue out of this depressing turn, so here's Matt Tabor doing an impression of Terry from Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Pee-wee. Please, Pee-wee.
The Pee-wee Herman show was a massive success, both on stage and with a taping for HBO, and it catapulted Reubens, or more accurately, Pee-wee, to superstardom, rarely, if ever, appearing out of character, even for interviews, performing acts on David Letterman, and becoming a household name, which I would argue he still is to this day. But it was only a matter of time before Hollywood showed up to cash in on his success. Part 3. Pee-wee's Big Adventure. While writing the initial script to what would eventually become Pee-wee's Big Adventure on the Warner Brothers backlot, Reubens noticed that the employees would ride their bicycles between the buildings and sets, which inspired him to rework the script into a loose parody of the 1940s Italian film Bicycle Thieves, which I watched in preparation for this video, and yeah, it shares a lot of similarities. Though when I watched it, after hearing that it influenced Penis Weenus Bigot Venus, I stupidly expected it to be somewhat humorous, but no. It's a gloomy, post-World War II neo-realist film about a poor man who can't catch a break after his only means of work, aka his bicycle, is stolen. And without spoiling anything, seriously, you should watch it, it's great. It ends in a very depressing, very Italian way. What do I mean by very Italian? Well, you know how Suspiria just kind of ends? No epilogue or anything? It's kinda like that, but sad. And after Reubens and Hartman locked in their script, it was time to find a director. Enter Timothy Walter Burton, a native of Burbank, California. Born in 1958, he grew up a self-proclaimed outcast, having difficulty connecting with others, only finding solace in creating art. In his later years, he would ponder if he was autistic, though he's never been diagnosed. But hearing how he talks about certain subjects and watching Edward Scissorhands, yeah, that tracks. But he should really be screened. I hate it when people self-diagnose. Anyway, Burton also attended CalArts. See? Callback. Though the two never crossed paths there as far as I know. Burton's work at CalArts would land him a job at Disney, where he would work as an animator on such films as The Fox and the Hound, The Black Cauldron, Tron, and outside of Disney, he did some work on that fucking bizarre Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings adaptation. Burton would then get his chance to direct 2 short films for the Walt Disney Company. Vincent, a stop-motion animated poem about a young boy who idolizes Vincent Price, narrated by Price himself, and Frankenweenie, a live-action parody of, you guessed it, Frankenstein, specifically the 1931 James Whale Boris Karloff adaptation. But instead of resurrecting human corpses, it's a dog. The dark, twisted nature of these shorts unfortunately led to Burton being fired from Disney, though they did have their fans, one of which being Paul Reubens, and after a recommendation from Frankenweenie star Shelley Duvall, who also passed away recently, Reubens was introduced to Tim Burton, and the two developed a kinship and mutual love for each other's work, and that's when Reubens knew he had found the right man for the job. So remember when I said the movie was more Burton-y than you might think? Well, as the film begins, you hear the unmistakable sound of a score by Danny Elfman, the composer who would go on to score nearly every Tim Burton film going forward. It's a common misconception that Pee-wee's Big Adventure was his first film score, when, in actuality, it was his second. The first being his brother Richard Elfman's surrealist absurdist musical, Forbidden Zone, starring the Elfman brothers' musical comedy troupe, the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo, which Danny would later develop into the 80s new wave band, simply called Oingo Boingo. It's cleaner. Both Burton and Reubens were fans of Oingo Boingo, which is why Burton hired Elfman to compose the music. But I thought, knowing the kind of person that Paul Reubens was, there was no way in the sixth dimension underneath the Hercules family's house that he had not seen Forbidden Zone. And after some cursory research, I was right. Actually, there's another recommendation for you guys. If you're into weird, absurdist indie movies, just know within the first, 5 minutes, there's this use of surrealist blackface, which has a point, but it's incredibly off-putting, especially to first-time viewers, so you've been warned. Anyway, Elfman's score is just great. You'd never guess this was only his second film score. He already had his style pretty much down pat. And it does a lot of the heavy lifting during the opening credits, which are little more than that Friday the 13th-esque white text on a black background. But because of the bombastic, silly score, you really don't notice the lack of visuals during the opening credits. At least I don't. But the film also has inceptions of what would eventually become Tim Burton's staples. Exaggerated sets, Rube Goldberg machines, off-putting and often horrifying stop motion, it's all here. And it's abundantly clear that Burton comes from an animation background, with his use of color and, well, animation. But unlike what would go on to define a Tim Burton production from 2005 on, the style is in service of the story, or more accurately, the character of Pee-wee. Pee-wee views the world through the eyes of a child, or in his case, a man-child, but not in the basement-dwelling modern Star Wars fan sort of way.
Disney itself is saying it is the wokest Star Wars show ever, and of course is a DEI Jedi.
He finds joy in his toys, and obviously his bike, and his familiarity with the world that's in front of him. He feels safe and loved within his Technicolor community. Pretty much everybody loves him, including Dottie, who we'll talk about a little bit more later. Really, the only one in his little town who doesn't seem to like him is Francis Buxton, the spoiled rich man-child antithesis of Pee-wee.
Today is my birthday, and my father said I can have anything I want.
Good for you and your father.
Who really only dislikes him because he wants Pee-wee's one-of-a-kind bicycle. If you couldn't guess, the bike getting stolen which sets Pee-wee off in his titular big adventure was orchestrated by beardless J.D. Vance over here. Actually, that's mean. Mark Holton does not deserve to be compared to that fucking idiot. Though, stealing someone's bicycle just to look superior does seem like a very Trumpian thing to do. JD, I want you to steal Pee-wee's bicycle, that red bicycle. It should be a MAGA bicycle, to tell you the truth. And if Pee-wee comes looking for it, I'll send Mitch McConnell to come play your father. There are only two genders, bi meaning two. God damn it.
I know you are, but what am I? I know you are, but what am I?
I know you are, but what am I? Infinity.
In any case, going back to his Technicolor community, Pee-wee's house is kind of every kid's dream. Like, it's what little kids picture living on their own to be like when they grow up. A house filled with toys, junk food, a little puppy dog, and general childlike clutter that, if it were real, the health department of Greene County would condemn his house, and he would have to move out of it?
I'm working on it.
Oh my god, can you imagine RFK if he ever saw what Pee-wee ate for breakfast? Pee-wee, I'm afraid you eating all of that sugar is gonna make you gay. God damn. He also brushes his teeth before he eats, which, come on, we all did that when we were kids.
Mad dog!
I still quote that almost daily when I brush my teeth, meaning I quote it almost every time I brush my teeth, which is every day. Twice. You're judging me. Stop. In reality, the exteriors of Pee-wee's house was shot right here in Pasadena. Now, the house isn't red anymore like it is in the movie, but it's still recognizably Pee-wee Herman's house. In fact, despite it being, a road trip movie, most of the film was shot here in Pasadena and the greater Los Angeles area in general. And fun fact, less than a mile to our west is the Michael Myers house from Halloween. And because it's never explicitly said where Pee-wee's Big Adventure takes place, you can make it your headcanon that Pee-wee Herman lives in Haddonfield. Oh, and look over there. It's more filming locations from Halloween. See, that's the intersection, and that's the place where Michael steals his mask. We've done this already. After the inciting incident of his bike getting stolen, we see Pee-wee's world becoming darker, more dangerous. In the scene before he's getting ripped off by the fortune teller, claiming that his bike is in the basement at the Alamo, we see him wandering down a dark alley, where a group of thugs, led by director Tim Burton in a cameo, ambush him. And does this alley look familiar to you? This was actually shot on the Warner Brothers backlot, and it's the very same alleyway where the upside-down kiss from the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man was shot. How neat is that? When he's on the road to the Alamo, hitchhiking off a road here in Santa Clarita, Pee-wee meets several unlikely and colorful characters. There's Mickey, a dangerous escaped convict who, despite his gruff exterior,
What'd you do?
I lost my temper and I took a knife and you know those little do not remove under the penalty of law labels they put on mattresses?
Yeah.
Well, I cut one of them off.
Boy, I always thought that was the dumbest law.
forms a legitimate fondness for Pee-wee, and he lets him go because he doesn't want Pee-wee to get mixed up with him, telling him something similar Pee-wee told Dottie earlier in the film.
I'm a loner, a rebel.
I'm a loner, Dottie. A rebel. Deja vu.
See you in the promised land. Arrivederci, baby.
That is such a Phil Hartman line. And it makes sense. He was originally supposed to play this character, but he opted out to have a cameo as a newscaster instead.
When exactly did you become blood brothers?
And I'll get back to Dottie soon, I promise. Then, of course, there's Large Marge, who gave every child who watched this in the 80s and 90s nightmares.
Be sure and tell him Large Marge sent ya. Large Marge sent me.
But this leads Pee-wee to the diner where he meets Simone, a down-on-her-luck waitress who confides in Pee-wee. She tells him she's trying to find the courage to leave her abusive boyfriend Andy and fulfill her lifelong dream of visiting France, in a sweet scene that also manages to have one of the funniest lines in the movie.
Simone, this is your dream. You have to follow it.
I know you're right, but...
But what? Everyone I know has a big butt. Come on, Simone, let's talk about your big butt.
The scene also has one of the most iconic locations in the movie, the dinosaurs. Because of the logistics of filming the scene, the interiors were shot on a set. However, these dinosaurs are a very real roadside attraction here in California, the Cabazon Dinosaurs. And you can go inside them. It's real. Sure, they're not as roomy as they are in the film, but they're still pretty cool. I wish I could have gone there a little over a year ago, when the owners actually painted Mr. Rex to look like Pee-wee Herman, as a tribute to the late Paul Reubens. But I'm still glad that I got to go, and that they're still there after all these years. A few months ago, and a few pounds ago, I enlisted my friend Matt Tabor to take a drive out with me to the dinosaurs. It was a little bit more of an ambitious adventure than when we went to the filming locations for Loquisha or Halloween, the Cabazon Dinosaurs being a 2-hour drive from Burbank. So, a little over halfway, we stopped in Rialto, California, so I could try Dutch Brothers coffee upon Tabor's request.
So where are we? Greatest place on earth, baby, Rialto, California.
Though I tried one of their in-house energy drinks while Tabor had some of their coffee.
I got the tropical one. It looks very green. It's pretty fucking good.
Sick, nice.
Wanna try it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Not too bad.
I'm glad we took the stop.
We did it, baby.
Rialto, California. You can't beat this place.
After we refueled and learned of the magic of Rialto, California, we continued east until we saw the dinosaurs in the distance. And let me tell you, unlike the four-headed disappointment that wasn't worth desecrating the land of the Native Americans that is Mount Rushmore, seriously, it's so small and unimpressive. The Cabazon Dinosaurs are just as big as they appear in the movie, maybe even bigger. When we parked, we saw a sign pointing to a gift shop, but the place looked deserted. We thought maybe we came a little too late in the day, or maybe it was just closed for the season. But as we made our way to Dinny the Brontosaurus, we discovered that Dinny was the gift shop, and that's where all the people were. Tabor and I then learned that in order to enter Mr. Rex like they do in the movie, there was a $15 fee. We thought, well, we're already here. It seems steep, but might as well. But guys, what we didn't know was that there was almost like a theme park leading up to the T-Rex. There were all these different dinosaurs made out of different materials. Some of them were animatronic, some of them were lit up. It was actually really, really cool and worth the price of admission alone.
That looks like the one from the dinosaur ride at Disney World.
Oh yeah.
This guy.
Well, that guy just looks like the guy from Dinosaur.
From Dinosaur, yeah.
There was also this dino dig that Tabor was very eager to get himself into. So what are the rules again?
If you find a rock the name of a dinosaur on it, it says that you get to exchange it for a free prize.
There was a promise of a free prize, and Matt Tabor can't say no to a free prize.
I found this immediately.
What's his name?
I could not tell you what it says. I think I see the word Don on it. It's something. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what it says. The highest tier ticket is $15. So we spent 30 a piece for us, but like
that's nothing.
If you were just driving this and you had to take the kids over or something like that, like you just wanted to like stretch your gams for a bit, I can't think of a better $15 to spend. You know, this is nice. So when we find out what a free gift is.
Yeah. Yeah, you really went ham on that dig.
Oh yeah, I was efficient. I'm really good at escape rooms.
But when we finally made it to the main attraction, the T-Rex, it all felt so surreal. We were actually there on the location that they shot 40 years ago. There's more. We're almost there. This is a lot bigger than I thought. Are you all right? Yeah. Worth the price of admission?
Hell yeah. This is fantastic. This is so sick. I mean, yeah, because I thought it was $15. I was just for this, and I was like, yeah, we're getting it. This is so much better, yeah.
So Matt's getting his free prize.
Sweet, thank you.
So after Matt Tabor collected his free prize, I wanted to get something for myself to commemorate my time at the Cabazon Dinosaurs. I wonder, because like there's shirts over here too, if they have one in my size. So I got myself this shirt, and what better shirt? It's even Pee-wee gray, and it says Large Marge sent me. It seemed appropriate.
Let the world hear your roar.
Look. I know I said I'm not going to do a play-by-play of everything that happens in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, but I have to mention the scene with the train bum and the iconic bar scene. After realizing that, obviously, his bike wasn't in the basement at the Alamo, because
there's no basement at the Alamo,
a defeated Pee-wee tries to trek his way back home, trying to get a bus ticket from Dottie. I'll get there. Before getting accosted by Simone's abusive boyfriend. This, among many other shenanigans, leads Pee-wee to the biker bar, where he accidentally insults them.
I'm trying to use the phone!
And inadvertently knocks over their motorcycles. The bikers, somewhat understandably, want to get a piece of Pee-wee, needing to go through their leader first, who's played by Cassandra Peterson, in a rare performance where she's not playing Elvira. However, because he's Pee-wee, he manages to win them over with his iconic tequila dance, which I learned from writing this originated from Reubens' stand-up. They then induct him into their gang, give him his own ride, which, again, because he's Pee-wee, he's not quite grown up enough for it, and he hurts himself. He ends up in the hospital where he discovers on TV that his bike was given to some spoiled rich brat who's filming on the Warner Brothers backlot. And this is all where it kind of comes full circle, both within the movie and outside the movie. Pee-wee sneaks in, pretending to be part of Milton Berle's entourage, and steals his bike back from that little snot-nosed punk, leading to a fun and goofy chase scene. Pee-wee crashes the sets of a Godzilla movie, a kitschy 50s beach movie, a Tarzan film, a Christmas movie, and a Twisted Sister music video. I feel like this was just Paul Reubens having fun and wanting to put in everything he loved and was inspired by into the movie. And after he escapes, the movie didn't have to do this, but Pee-wee gets a little arc to cap things off. Throughout the film, he's had one single-minded goal: to get his bike back. While not necessarily selfish, Pee-wee is challenged to perform two selfless acts. The first being talking Simone through her difficult situation.
You were right, Pee-wee. I'm making my wish come true. I'm off to Paris. Thanks.
Side note, the whole subplot with Simone, especially the last time I watched this, left me with such bittersweet feelings. Just by nature of existing, Pee-wee makes everyone's lives around him just a little bit better. He's a lot like Dale Cooper in that way, where his satisfaction comes from how happy he's made others, especially Simone.
Good luck, Pee-wee. I just know you're gonna find your bike. Au revoir. Au revoir, Pee-wee. Au revoir, Simone.
Simone's actress, Diane Salinger's tribute to Paul Reubens at Hollywood Forever brought tears to my eyes. It was so sincere, and it resonated with me so much, and I'm sure I wasn't alone.
If you wouldn't mind closing your eyes for 10 seconds and remembering the most wonderful memories of Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Paul.
Sorry, emotional tangent. Selfless acts. And the second, even though he's inches away from freedom, having reclaimed his bike, Pee-wee sees a pet store on fire, and he takes the time to rescue every single animal within the store. Well, except for a few fish, but when the police show up, Pee-wee says that there's still a few fish inside.
There's still a few more fish inside.
So it's my headcanon that all the animals survived, thanks to Pee-wee. Then, the movie decides to get a little meta. His cross-country story inspires the head of Warner Brothers, who's thankfully not David Zaslav yet, to adapt his story into a movie. Of course, the movie would be loosely based on his adventure, turning Pee-wee into a badass spy played by James Brolin. But at least they gave Pee-wee a cameo.
Paging Mr. Herman. Mr. Herman, you have a telephone call at the front desk.
And at the premiere at the drive-in, we get a curtain call of sorts of every person that Pee-wee has positively touched along the way. Simone, who's achieved her dream of going to France and who's now with a better, more healthy partner. The train bum, the biker gang, and even Mickey makes an appearance. Now, the drive-in holds a certain significance throughout the film. And yes, this is where I'm finally going to talk about Dottie. And before I say what I'm about to say, two things. One, I know I'll get crucified if I don't mention that Dottie is played by Buttercup Tommy Pickles' Valley Girl actress Elizabeth E.G. Daly. And two, this was all just speculation and my own personal opinion, based on little more than vibes and my own personal experience. Dottie has a crush on Pee-wee, who clearly doesn't reciprocate her feelings, and over the course of the film's runtime, she's trying to get him to go to the drive-in with her, but Pee-wee keeps trying to get out of it, in his own Pee-wee way. But at the end of the movie, when he literally has to be at the drive-in for the film's premiere, there she is, with him. And even though her Morgan Fairchild film counterpart ends up with Pee-wee Brolin,
I know you are. But what am I?
both Dottie and the real Pee-wee ride off into the night and end the movie as just friends, which I think is perfect. So, full disclosure, I wrote this portion of the video a few months ago, maybe around August, and I thought maybe it could just be me. But after watching Paul Reubens in interviews, his fondness for camp, and pretty much the entirety of the third film, Pee-wee's Big Holiday, I thought that Pee-wee, and by extension Paul Reubens, was, well, part 4. Pee-wee Herman is gay!
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
And I thought, if he's not gay, he's at the very least queer. Pee-wee Herman is kind of an unofficial icon of the LGBTQ+ community. And I think that's awesome.
Bisexuals, trisexuals, homo sapiens, class managers, hallucinogens, men, Pee-wee Herman.
And it turns out, I was fucking right. When I finally got around to recording this, the documentary Pee-wee as Himself was released at the Sundance Film Festival. And in said documentary, Paul Reubens revealed that he was, in fact, gay, stating, "I was secretive about my sexuality, even to my friends, out of self-hatred or self-preservation. I was conflicted about sexuality. But fame was way more complicated." I would say this recontextualizes my thoughts going forward, but in actuality, it just kind of reaffirmed my speculations. Dude, I was bracing myself for the dumbasses who were gonna jump down my throat and proclaim, "Why does everything nowadays have to be gay? DEI much?" Why does it sound like Rodney Dangerfield? No respect. Turns out my gaydar was just spot on. And I can't wait to watch this documentary once it becomes commercially available. Which is right now, apparently. That's right. I procrastinated on this video so much that now it coincides with the release of Pee-wee as Himself on HBO Max. I guess sometimes procrastination can be a good thing. That's not even remotely true. I just lucked out. This video should have been done ages ago. Regardless, I was actually able to attend the premiere of part 1 of Pee-wee as Himself at the Directors Guild of America in Hollywood, which was super cool. I even got to say hi to Elvira, who said hi back, but I figured this wasn't the time or place to ask for a photo, but she acknowledged my existence, and that was enough for me. They only premiered part 1, it being released in 2 parts, but it was incredible. It was directed by Matt Wolf, who spoke a little bit before the screening, and produced by the Safdie brothers, the creative minds behind Good Time and Uncut Gems. And look, format-wise, this isn't going to reinvent the wheel when it comes to how documentaries are made. But because the subject was Paul Reubens, who, even though he didn't disclose his diagnosis to the filmmakers while they were filming, he comes off as incredibly funny, insightful, and, ironically enough, full of life. The stories he tells, which include far more detailed versions of the ones in this video, except, you know, from the horse's mouth, range from being hilarious and enlightening to tragic and heartbreaking. The doc deals a lot with his sexuality and how he felt like he needed to hide behind Pee-wee, almost to escape himself and persecution, while at the same time longing for recognition as himself, as Paul. I was worried that the tabloids were blowing that aspect of the docuseries out of proportion before I saw it, but
that's what the entire movie's about.
Oh, okay. I got emotional several times in the theater, and this was only part 1. Imagine how distraught I'm gonna be when I finally get to watch part 2. I feel like spending way too much time on this video, which should have taken, 2 months max to make? Regardless, spending all this time on this video, I grew way more attached to Paul, and I guess part of me wasn't ready to let go. One last thing as an addendum to how we came up with the Pee-wee character. He does mention the harmonica and the kid named Herman in the docuseries, but he also credits his first boyfriend, Guy, with coming up with several of Pee-wee's mannerisms. Namely, the childish way he expresses whatever he's describing as, blankety, like,
chocolatey!
After the screening, a group of us went out to Carney's in West Hollywood, which, by the way, has an excellent vegan hamburger. But I also found out that their smallest size soda is called the Pee-wee Herman. That's serendipity, I guess. So I'm in West Hollywood right now. I just saw part 1 of Pee-wee as himself, and they have a billboard of it, or a mural, or whatever you want to call that. So I just thought it was cool. I gotta go home now. Even though I should have finished this video months ago like I originally planned, I'm kinda glad I waited, because now I can include this. I felt like it was important. I'll touch on this more throughout the video, but I want to move on and talk about, arguably, the most well-known Pee-wee property outside of Big Adventure. Part 5. Pee-wee's Playhouse. After the colossal success that was Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Paul Reubens, Danny Elfman, and Tim Burton became Hollywood's next obsession. Everyone was wondering what they would do next. To Tim Burton's credit, he stuck to his creative guns, not having been impressed with the scripts being sent his way, one of which being hot to trot. He was actually all set to make Batman, but several factors got in the way, which could be a topic for another video. But all that led to Burton making Beetlejuice, with Danny Elfman again composing the score. And speaking of Elfman, his discography needs no introduction. Outside of John Williams, he might be the most recognizable composer in all of film, scoring everything from The Simpsons theme, and like I said, almost every Tim Burton movie going forward, as well as Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the 50 Shades of Grey movies, and as for Reubens, Pee-wee Herman had become so popular that he was given absolute carte blanche to create a Saturday morning children's show for CBS, with a budget of almost $500,000 per episode. This became the wildly successful Pee-wee's Playhouse, essentially a toned-down continuation of the Pee-wee Herman show. But just because it's toned down, doesn't mean it's not equally as weird and bursting with creativity. It's like a 1950s children's show akin to what Reubens would watch in his youth. On crack.
This is crack.
No. We're not there yet. There were puppets, various different styles of animation, and just this kinetic energy that really only stuff on Adult Swim could match today. But even that's debatable. And speaking of Adult Swim, that's how I discovered Pee-wee Herman, when they were showing reruns of Pee-wee's Playhouse on the program in the mid-2000s. Probably the most well-known running joke was the secret word of the day, in which Conky the robot would provide Pee-wee with a word written on a strip of paper, and the characters and audience were instructed to scream real loud whenever the word was said. I would say this would be a great way to piss off your parents when you were a kid, but the show garnered the praise of the parents too. And not only does it feature some of the same cast members from the stage show, but also several performers that were yet to be famous. The most notable ones, to me, being Natasha Lyonne as one of the members of the Playhouse gang, and Lawrence Fishburne as Cowboy Curtis. This is actually where future director John Singleton, who worked as a security guard and PA on the show, met Fishburne. So I guess you could say, without Pee-wee's Playhouse, there would be no Boys in the Hood. Also behind the scenes, a young Rob Zombie worked as a PA, so that's pretty cool. And, starting in season 2, the king of cartoons was played by Blackula himself, William Marshall. Also, those crazy vocals during the zany opening credits were provided by Cyndi Lauper doing a Betty Boop impression. which I only found out by doing research for this video. And even though Danny Elfman did provide some of the music for the series, the show was almost 100% composed by Devo's Mark Mothersbaugh. Also pretty cool. Honestly, I can go on and on about Pee-wee's Playhouse, but you get the broad gist of it. Also, there's a lot of it, which would make this video a lot longer than it probably already is, so let's move on to Pee-wee's lesser theatrical follow-up. Part 6, Big Top Pee-wee. Big Top Pee-wee was released a little under 3 years after Pee-wee's Big Adventure, without the involvement of Tim Burton, who was off making Beetlejuice at the time, or Phil Hartman, who felt like the Pee-wee character had run its course and moved on to SNL. Instead, the film was helmed by Grease director Randall Kleiser and produced by Halloween producer Deborah Hill. This time, the movie was distributed by Paramount Pictures as opposed to Warner Brothers, which is why returning composer Danny Elfman couldn't use any of the themes from the previous film. And this movie kinda sucks. It has none of the charm of Pee-wee's Big Adventure or Pee-wee's Playhouse, which was still airing at the time, which makes it extra strange because the TV show is so kitschy and colorful, and Big Top Pee-wee looks like it was shot for like $6. Basically, the plot is, after a tornado on his farm, a la The Wizard of Oz, a circus blows into town, and Pee-wee helps out both the ringleader, played by Chris Christopherson from Heaven's Gate and Blade, who literally passed away days before I recorded this portion of the video, and Gina, a beautiful trapeze artist. And right off the bat, there are several things wrong with this movie, as a continuation of the Pee-wee character. In this inexplicable new town that he lives in, everybody hates Pee-wee, for the reasons you'd think everybody would hate him in Big Adventure. But they don't, because he lived in an idyllic, friendly town. And there's these conniving older ladies, one of them played by Mrs. Chalfont from Twin Peaks, or the Marble Rye lady from Seinfeld if you're nasty. What the fuck does that even mean? Also, Pee-wee is kind of unlikable here. For some reason, he comes off as more annoying, and I think I can attribute that to the lack of participation from Phil Hartman. But here's the big one that goes back to my previous point from part 4. Pee-wee gets involved in a love triangle between his fiancée, the ditzy school teacher Winnie, and Gina, the trapeze artist, who he flat out cheats on Winnie with. And let me just say, Pee-wee having a female love interest does not work at all, let alone him having 2. And they try really hard to make you think that Pee-wee is in love with both Winnie and Gina at different points of the movie. What are you doing, buddy? Even having Pee-wee being kind of oversexed and jumping on top of Winnie. But it all feels hollow, like they were trying to overcompensate by giving him a case of the not gays. And if you think I'm reading too far into this, I'm not. But wait until we talk about the third film. Sorry, Misty is here and he's distracting me by his cuteness. Look at this boy. Look at this boy being so good. Oh, you buddy. Now he's playing with his toy. Good boy? Oh, good boy. Good boy. So if you guys hear like jingling in the background, it's my cats playing. Hi, little guy. Oh, I was just praising you and now you're being bad. Look at this boy. Look at this big boy. Look at this baby boy. This big fat baby boy. But before we talk about the third movie, I suppose we should address the elephant in the room. And I'm not talking about the one from Big Top Pee-wee. Wait, was there an elephant in Big Top Pee-wee? Huh, I guess there is. Shows how memorable that movie was. Also, I guess I failed to mention that Pee-wee has a talking pig in the movie.
A couple of good-looking bachelors like you and me having so much girl trouble.
Oh, and look, it's Benicio del Toro. Cool. Regardless, I wish I didn't have to talk about this, but in 1991, Paul Reubens was arrested for allegedly wanking it in a porno theater in Sarasota, Florida. This sparked a media frenzy that caused reruns of Pee-wee's Playhouse to be pulled from syndication. And even though Reubens denied he was jerking his yerkin, come on guys, what the fuck else do you do in a porn theater? I think the whole thing was blown completely out of proportion. It definitely didn't go down the way that the snark tank joke that it did.
That's gonna be a loogie.
Then there was that later scandal, which, if y'all don't know, Paul Reubens was a collector of kitsch gay erotica, which further cemented my belief that Reubens was gay before it was confirmed, but anyway. He would buy these assortments in bulk, not knowing what most of the collections contained, and supposedly, some of the models featured may have been under the age of 18. Reubens strongly denied being interested in children in that way. And when the LAPD searched through his collection and computer, they found nothing to charge him with, and instead slapped him with an obscenity charge. I really don't want to continue this subject. And luckily, there isn't any more to discuss, so let's move on. I guess the final thing I'll say about the first scandal is that it led to one of the funniest anti-drug PSAs that I've ever seen.
This is crack.
It sure is, Pee-wee. It sure is. Part 7. Beyond Pee-wee. After a brief return to the character during the 1991 MTV Music Video Awards following the porn theater scandal, Reubens all but retired Pee-wee, and instead moved on to other projects. Most notably, to me, reuniting with Tim Burton on Batman Returns, where he portrays the Penguin's father alongside Simone, and the Burton-produced film The Nightmare Before Christmas, in which he voices Locke. He also starred in one of my personal favorite comic book films, the highly underrated Mystery Men, in which he plays the flatulent spleen.
I never thought I'd see Paul Reubens, sticking his butt in a limo and letting loose on Jeffrey Rush, Academy Award winner.
If you're a Disneyland aficionado, you'd know he was the voice of the droid pilot Rex in the original Star Tours.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight.
Look, Billy has now decided to join in on the action. Hey, Billy. Come here, buddy. Aw, good boy. Look who decided to join me. And this is something I only found out somewhat recently, but Paul Reubens was the original voice of Roger Rabbit during the initial screen tests.
Thank you, Mr. Valiant. I'll guard them with my life.
And knock off the Mr. Valiant stuff. Call me Eddie like everybody else.
Oh yeah. Thank you, Eddie.
Which, no disrespect to Charles Fleischer, but I think Paul Reubens would have knocked it out of the park. However, after the release of Mystery Men, there were rumblings of a resurrection of Pee-wee Herman. Since 1999, Reubens continued to try to find new avenues to revive his beloved character. There were talks of an adult, dark Pee-wee movie akin to Valley of the Dolls, a Pee-wee's Playhouse film directed by Tim Burton, with Reubens even suggesting Johnny Depp take over the role, which I feel like would have been a mistake. But in 2009, Reubens decided to retool the original Pee-wee Herman show from HBO and bring it to Broadway. A few things would have to change. Notably, the boat captain was switched to Cowboy Curtis from Playhouse, who wasn't in the original stage show. In fact, characters like Cherry and the Magic Screen were incorporated into this version of the show. And, much like the original HBO special, it was a smashing success, and a welcome return of Pee-wee Herman, and he continued to stay relevant within the cultural zeitgeist. What are you doing? Well, it was fun while it lasted. And only 6 short years later, the third, and sadly, final Pee-wee film was released on Netflix. You know, back when original programming on Netflix was good, and not like now when things are, dumped on Netflix. Part 8. Pee-wee's Big Holiday. Pee-wee's Big Holiday which I'm surprised it only took me until now to realize that all 3 films in the Pee-wee franchise have the word big in the title, is such a sweet movie. Comparing it to Big Adventure seems a tad unfair, Pee-wee's Big Adventure being a bona fide classic at this point, but I also feel like it's unfair to compare it to Big Top Pee-wee, because most things are better than Big Top Pee-wee. But it's a completely different flavor. I think, since Paul Reubens brought back a variation of the original stage show, which, as I said before, was a bit more adult, the movie is a little bit more similar to Big Adventure because it's got something in there for the adults, but it's got a little something in there for the kids too. It's kind of for everyone. Though, and I think Reubens knew this at the time of the film's release, most of the people who are into Pee-wee were the adults, the kids just watching because of their parents, and not the other way around. Again, like Big Adventure, the film is incredibly simple. This time, Pee-wee Herman lives in an idyllic suburb called Fairville. And because the people are friendly and he feels safe and comfortable, he really has no reason to leave. But after he receives devastating news that his band is breaking up, he meets cool, biker, muscle daddy Joe Manganiello playing himself, who Pee-wee quickly takes a liking to, and Joe, who's just as smitten for Pee-wee, convinces him to embark on an adventure past Fairville to New York City to attend Joe's birthday party. The characters he meets along the way, while not necessarily being as iconic as the ones from Big Adventure, are fun and memorable in their own right. Almost immediately after leaving town, he gets mixed up with these 3 female bank robbers, with the smallest one, played by Arrested Development's Aaliyah Shawkat, being nicknamed Pee-wee. He also meets a weirdo mountain man, visits an Amish community, where he meets up with the bank robbers again, and also gets entangled with a farmer, played by the guy from Eraserhead.
It's okay.
Whose daughters all have a thing for Pee-wee. And instead of going with the whole "stay away from my daughter" stereotype, the farmer kinda goes in the opposite direction, forcing Pee-wee to marry one of them. But because this version of Pee-wee has reverted back from his Big Top iteration, he's got no interest in women, escaping with a disguise kit he got when he befriended a traveling salesman. And for eagle-eyed viewers out there, the woman that he meets with the flying car is none other than Simone's actress Diane Salinger from Big Adventure. And even though she's playing a different character, it's nice to see them reconnect one last time. But remember a second ago when I said he reverted back to pre-Big Top Pee-wee? Well, I really don't think we could deny this any longer, but Pee-wee and this movie are very gay. And I don't just mean the very John Waters style of filmmaking or him not wanting to marry one of the farmer's daughters. No. The whole crux of this movie is that Pee-wee is trying his damnedest to get to Joe Manganiello's birthday party, going to great lengths to get there, because he has a massive crush on Joe.
This is all happening so fast.
And I'm not talking out of my ass here. When we're first introduced to Joe, Pee-wee is clearly crushing on him. And throughout the film, he has several dream sequences about him. And when Pee-wee finally makes it to New York in time for the party, he is greeted with one final obstacle, getting stuck down a well. And he's devastated that he can't see Joe. And Joe seems to reciprocate those feelings. When he's reintroduced into the movie at his party, he's pouting like a schoolgirl because his crush hasn't shown up to his party yet.
There was only one person that I wanted to show up to my party, and he didn't.
But when Joe finds out what's happened to Pee-wee, he springs into action to rescue him.
Joe! Pee-wee!
Happy birthday.
And the two of them spend the rest of the night together, alone in Joe's treehouse, sharing their favorite snack. Root beer barrel candy sipped through a straw. It's so cute. And again, before the Sundance documentary, I knew a lot of people were going to think I'm reading too much into this. That Pee-wee and Joe just share a really intense bromance, but no, I don't see it that way. And actually, most people didn't either. Pee-wee's Big Holiday is very gay, in the best possible way. And I'm really glad that I watched it during Pride Month last year. It just seemed entirely appropriate. Reubens and Pee-wee would continue to make appearances in the years after the film's release, sharing the stage with Danny Elfman to celebrate The Nightmare Before Christmas, to wish Conan O'Brien farewell when he ended his talk show, and he even made convention appearances, sharing stories about Pee-wee, Tim Burton, and his life in general. Paul Reubens died of cancer on July 30th, 2023. At only 70 years old. Even though he had been diagnosed shortly after the production of Pee-wee's Big Holiday, he kept his silence about his illness, his passing shocking not just to the general public, but even his closest friends. In a statement released after his death, he even apologized for keeping it a secret, saying, quote, "Please accept my apology for not going public with what I have been facing the last 6 years. I have always felt a huge amount of love and respect for my friends, fans, and supporters. I have loved you all so much and enjoyed making art for you." And even well over a year later, his death still stings. I didn't necessarily grow up with Pee-wee Herman. My earliest memories of Paul Reubens either being from Star Tours or Mystery Men. But even I knew who Pee-wee Herman was. In around 2006, when they started airing reruns of Pee-wee's Playhouse on Adult Swim, I remember catching it every chance I could. It was just so weird and bizarre and creative. It was right up my alley. It was also around that time, as an awkward, outcast 14-year-old boy, that I became obsessed with Tim Burton. And I felt like I needed to own every movie that he made up to that point. Of course, I had Batman, Batman Returns, Beetlejuice. I had The Nightmare Before Christmas, which, yes, I know is not a Tim Burton movie. Henry Selick directed it, but that's beside the point right now. And I just remember being taken aback that the first movie that Tim Burton made was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. It was almost like my two obsessions at the time collided with serendipity. Since then, Paul Reubens and especially Pee-wee Herman have been a big part of my life. And I know there's the whole jacking off in a porn theater thing, but again, what the fuck else do you do in a porn theater? Regardless, Pee-wee and Paul taught me how important it was to stay true to myself, no matter how weird, unconventional, or, dare I say, queer. Several friends and colleagues paid tribute to Reubens in the month since he passed, including Conan O'Brien, Natasha Lyonne, Elvira, Joe Manganiello, Rob Zombie, and Tim Burton, among many, many others. A few months ago, my friend Tabor and I went to go see Pee-wee's Big Adventure at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where his ashes now reside, alongside John B. himself, John Paragon. Before the show, hundreds of people gathered on the grounds, paying respects to Paul, dressed up like Pee-wee and other characters from the film, and the pre-show consisted of even more colleagues saying their final goodbyes to Paul, including Fred Armisen.
Thank you, Paul. We have some guests, some friends who would like to come out and say hello.
Tony Hawk.
What he provided, what he's done with all of his art is such a gift to all of us.
E.G. Daily.
I feel really blessed to have gotten to be the Dottie to his Pee-wee.
Diane Salinger.
So just shut your eyes and think of the best moments you ever experienced with Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Mark Mothersbaugh.
This year on my birthday, it was the first year in about 40 years that I didn't get a birthday present from him.
And Danny Elfman.
You know, it's hard to even know where to start talking about my relationship with Paul because he changed my life.
During the film, Tabor and I started laughing at jokes that hadn't even happened yet, and we just reminisced about how much Pee-wee Herman meant to us. I know I didn't know him personally, but his unique take on comedy had a profound impact on me. So this is my little tribute to him, even if it is a little late. Very late. And even though Paul Reubens might be gone, his legacy, and more importantly, Pee-wee Herman, lives on. In the child, in all of us.
death is just so final. To be able to get your message in at the last minute is incredible.
Man, I wish I could have talked to Pee-wee. You know, pick his brain, ask questions, get closure. Wish? Did somebody say wish? Zombie! Yeah, I wish I could ask Pee-wee a question before I have to say goodbye forever. I shall channel the spirits of the great beyond. Now repeat after me, in Zombies. Mecca lecca hi, mecca hiney ho. Mecca lecca hi, mecca hiney ho. Nothing happened. Your wish is granted. Long live Zombie.
Hey, Matt! I hear you're a big fan.
And you've got some questions! Yay!
What do you want to know?
I'm an open book!
Yeah, what were you doing in that theater?
This!
How's that for a tribute? Eh? Get it? In all seriousness, though, I felt like I needed something out of left field after nearly 5 minutes of somberness. Anyway, I'd like to thank Max, Robith, Rukix, Big Drippy, Mrs. Froggy, and Len Noyle for supporting me on Patreon. And thank you for making it to the end of the video. I also want to thank my friends Michael and Matt Tabor for making this video possible and pushing me to get this video done. And now that the video is done, I can finally cut and dye my hair. Look at this, it's getting so unruly. But also, Michael playing Pee-wee meant so much to me that I needed to take a minute, go to the restroom, pretend like I was doing my hair, but in actuality, I was just so overrun by my emotions that he cared so much, and it felt like Pee-wee was right there, and all that meant so much to me. But I mean, I'd never tell him that. Oh wait, if he watches this video, he'll know. Shit, cut the camera. He can't know about this. Stop the video. Emotions are gay.